Title: The manager summoned me to his office with HR ****. James, after 16 years, we're terminating your role, he declared icily. Clear your desk by close of business. I gave a courteous nod and replied, I completely understand. They had no clue how thrilling Thursday would be. Chapter 1. The icy farewell. It was a dreary Wednesday morning, overcast and silent. The kind of day where something feels wrong, but you can't pinpoint why. James, the boss wants you in his office, Emily from reception murmured, her gaze flickering away. I knew. After 16 years, you sense it. The averted glances, the sudden HR presence, the untouched coffee pot in the break room, it all adds up. I walked the familiar corridor, passing framed photos of company retreats, the mission statement carved in brass, the awards I'd helped secure, and the meeting room where I'd closed multi-million-dollar deals, mentored half the leadership team, and worked weekends without a murmur. The door was ajar. Inside sat Richard, my manager, the type who grinned with his lips but never his eyes. Across from him was Laura, HR head, staring at her tablet. Richard skipped the pleasantries. James, after 16 years, we're terminating your role. No reasoning, no gratitude, just a clinical cut. Clear your desk by close of business. I met his gaze, then Laura's. I smiled, not the reaction they anticipated. I completely understand. I didn't protest or plead because they didn't know what Thursday had in store, and it had been brewing for a while. Chapter 2. They overlooked who laid the groundwork. Back at my desk, the atmosphere felt dreamlike. Colleagues stole glances, murmuring. Some flashed forced smiles, a few dared awkward pats on the shoulder. I didn't engage. My mind wasn't on packing. It was on plans I'd set in motion a year earlier, just in case. Unlike Richard, I hadn't spent my years here clawing up the ranks by stepping on others. I'd studied everything: HR policies, corporate acquisitions, supplier agreements, licensing deals. I'd built the IT department's foundation. The servers, vendor partnerships, even the backup systems were my designs. More crucially, I quietly ran a small cybersecurity firm, one that had been securing government contracts for 5 years. No one at work knew. I kept it separate. I'd even let this company hire my firm for a minor pilot project last year. They saw me as a loyal worker, but I was also a silent vendor, a discreet investor, and most critically, someone who knew every vulnerability in their operations. At 4:45 p.m., I took my box and left. But I didn't head home. I drove to my private office across town, poured a coffee, and fired up my laptop. Richard wanted a fight? Let Thursday ignite. Chapter 3. Thursday's signal at precisely 7 o'clock m. Thursday, Richard swaggered into the office, tailored suit pristine, ego puffed, sipping his overpriced latte. By 7:05, an email landed in his inbox. Subject: Urgent action required, supplier contract audit. It came from legal. Apparently, a recent cybersecurity contract, greenlit under Richard's watch, was flagged for a conflict of interest. The vendor, my firm, was under scrutiny for possessing detailed knowledge of the company's systems, including sensitive employee data and compliance gaps. What Richard didn't realize was that my firm held every approval email, every payment record, and every recorded meeting where he'd signed off without glancing at the details. By 8 o'clock a.m., the CFO called an emergency meeting. By 9 o'clock, the board was informed. By 9:30, a politely worded email hit my old corporate inbox, which they hadn't deactivated. We request clarification on your firm's involvement with our organization. There appears to be significant confusion regarding the contract timeline and approval process. I grinned. The timeline, ironclad. I'd submitted everything legally and transparently. The issue was Richard's hasty, careless approvals, including a conflict of interest he never disclosed. When someone discards you after 16 years, they think they've closed your chapter. But in truth, they've just given you the pen. Chapter 4. Boardroom tension and fractures in the kingdom. By noon on Thursday, Richard's day had spiraled from smug to catastrophic. The boardroom was packed, with legal sitting rigidly on one side. The CFO's jaw was tight. The CTO, one of the few executives who respected me, kept darting glances between documents and Richard, as if unraveling a mystery. And in a way he was. I don't get it, Richard stammered, flipping through contract copies with shaky hands. This vendor was James's side project. He ran it on his own time. Correct, the CFO said evenly. But did you disclose your personal connection when you approved him as a vendor for critical systems? Because it looks like you authorized $2.7 million in contracts without board oversight. Richard's face paled. He had, He'd rushed every signature to modernize and streamline after my exit. What he didn't know was that each contract included clauses triggering audits if mishandled or terminated abruptly. One clause: a $800,000 termination fee if canceled after the system ran for 90 days, which it had. The best part? Legal had approved that clause buried deep, unnoticed unless you read the fine print, which Richard never did. From my private office, I watched the chaos unfold via internal emails forwarded by a loyal colleague still inside. Richard looks like he's about to collapse. The CTO is furious. James's firm is bulletproof. Did they really think they could erase him like that? The first domino had tipped, but Thursday's storm was just beginning. Chapter 5. The trap springs by Thursday evening. Richard was unraveling. He tried to maintain control, storming out of the boardroom, snapping at assistants, and dialing old contacts for favors. But nothing could halt what I'd set in motion. At 6:20 p.m., another forwarded email arrived, this one frantic. Subject: urgent, legal threat from former employee *. James has clearly engineered this. He embedded those clauses to harm the company. We need to sue for sabotage or at least block the payout. Legal's reply: all clauses were reviewed and approved by you, Richard. Mr. Thompson. James disclosed everything. Your failure to document or flag conflicts is your responsibility. This isn't a legal violation, it's a procedural error. Translation: Richard had no case. I'd followed every rule. Every clause was legal, every contract time-stamped, every approval notified to the board. The $800,000 termination fee was just the start. What Richard didn't know was that I'd registered my firm months before my termination. I'd already begun securing clients and vendors I'd cultivated over 16 years. I'd hired 3 junior engineers from the company, ones Richard smugly claimed could replace me. Now they worked for me, freelancing at triple their old pay, helping me transition the very systems Richard no longer grasped. That night his assistant called me. Her voice trembled. James, Richard asked if you'd consider stepping in, maybe help fix the vendor issue, perhaps as a temporary consultant. I smiled before responding calmly. Tell Richard I completely understand, but my schedule's full. Best of luck. I hung up. That phrase, I completely understand, echoed the words I'd said when they fired me, but now it carried a different weight. It meant I understand you've destroyed your own kingdom and now I get to watch it crumble. Chapter 6. The final strike Friday morning brought headlines: executive upheaval at Tech Trend amid conflict of interest scandal. Someone had leaked the audit findings. The article named Richard explicitly, citing gross negligence, fiduciary breaches, and costly contract mistakes that exposed the company to massive losses. The figures were stark: $800,000 in termination fees, $2.7 million in suspended vendor services, and a projected $5.5 million in migration costs after the abrupt end to my systems. The press portrayed Richard as what he was, a scheming opportunist who cut corners and got caught. At 9:50 a.m., I received a final message from the CTO, short and direct. He's gone. Board voted this morning. Thanks, James. Richard had been ousted as CEO. Officially, it was a resignation for personal reasons. Privately, it was a forced exit with no severance and a looming internal lawsuit for damages. By Saturday, my firm's inbox was flooded with offers, not just from my former company, but from 2 major competitors who admired how smoothly I'd handled the situation and respected my restraint. Restraint, when I could have gone nuclear. But the best moment came Sunday morning, pulling into the parking lot of my new office. A modern downtown space I'd purchased with my consulting profits and the severance Richard couldn't block. My firm's name, James Thompson Consulting *, was etched in polished chrome on the door. I paused, taking it in. 16 years of dedication discarded with a single cold sentence. But in return, I gained something far greater: independence, success, and the chance to rebuild on my terms. Richard, last I heard, he was a strategic consultant at a mid-level shipping firm, his LinkedIn profile scrubbed of his former role. And every year on the anniversary of that Thursday, I send a handwritten note. Just 3 words: I completely understand. Was this justice well earned? Share what you'd have done in the comments below. Love the story. Pass it on to someone who needs this vibe. And follow Sarah's Tales for more gripping stories of betrayal and triumph. Because here, every deception meets its reckoning, and every betrayal finds its shadow. Stay sharp, stay resilient, and stay tuned.